Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, I know which one's mine.
Hi.
How you doing, Josh? You awake? One of these days he's gonna fall asleep on me and I'm gonna be so happy.
He doesn't want to fall asleep in reach of me.
All you gotta do is just shift over.
Right?
I don't know, he's listening, he's talking about what you're given in our class, so he's listening.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, it's good,
It
it's
is.
great.
That's good. I always like it when someone listens. You know what I mean?
Helps, huh?
It helps a little bit.
Do I listen very well then?
Yes, you do. I've seen a lot. Okay, so you open your mouth, so now I get to say this. So in the time that I've been here, I've seen a lot of growth in this kid. In the 1 year since I've been here. And so since you open your mouth, I get to say that. And I don't mean this type of growth or this type of growth either, okay? I mean, we've seen some of that. All right, so tonight we are still in chapter 9 of the book of Revelation. We made it through the 5th trumpet, which was the first woe last week. And remember, this was just straight up torture. Basically, it was what was going on here, and to the point where even though man would desire, I mean, did you pick up on that last week? Man desired suicide.
Yes.
Did you pick up on that? That's how bad the torture was. The man actually desired suicide. But they couldn't. So there is that part there. They couldn't do it because death fled from them.
Can you imagine being, hurt so bad that you wanted, thinking you're going to get out of it if you die?
Yep. I mean, that's pain.
That is.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that might be as bad as man flu. I mean, it's up there. I mean, we all know what man flu is. When a woman gives birth, she barely experiences man flu. So, I mean, it's just so far up there.
Oh, yeah. You're definitely not a happy person.
Really? I gotta go.
But no, that's how bad the torture is just people would rather die.
I need him for chapter 5. Take some of the heat off.
Uh-oh.
You understand, Brother Dennis,
I told you, I've been
so
waiting.
far.
Right?
He doesn't push through.
Oh, see, I break through. I really do. I push
So
through.
you gave up the shovel and you get in the backhoe.
Yeah, I own a backhoe, and it digs deep.
You know what to take that a little bit further as far as the suicide, and that they'd rather do that. Also think about, okay, what they're witnessing at the time. I know that we question the Israelites and how they seen Jesus was here, and how did the people when he was walking the earth. Not at this point, you would have to believe that most of these people realize there's a God.
Yes.
And they're choosing, there's two things that amaze me here. They're choosing that, probably knowing that the other side of suicide is not the best thing either.
Right.
For them, by committing suicide like that. But yet they're choosing it. But what dumbfounds me is, again, why are they not turning to Christ at this point? You're at a point where you're ready to choose suicide when you could choose Jesus.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Amazes me.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So now, last week I kind of got up on my soapbox about the literalism view, and I kind of went to that because I don't fully agree with the literalism view, but that is out there. And so whenever I said, look, remember One of the things we're going to do in this is we're going to take some things literal that's in here, and when it describes Jesus as a victorious lamb, it's because he is one.
Yes.
You know, there's nothing. Remember, I read that one guy whose name I didn't give you. He said the visual description should not be pushed into excessive literalism. We are at that point in this book. You need to be pushed into excessive literalism. To give you a little bit of a spoiler alert, people are about ready to die whenever the sixth trumpet goes off. And that's kind of where we're at. People are going to die. And, well, you'll find out how hard people's hearts really are as we close out the chapter here tonight. But if somebody would like to start to read, actually, let's kind of break this down a little bit. If somebody would like to read verses 13 through 15, and we'll kind of set things up here.
And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, Loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men.
Okay, so here, whenever we are talking about an angel, I want to get something across here. At this point, there is a very, very strong belief. Almost every single scholar that has ever done anything on Revelation agree on one thing, finally. This is demonic, what is about ready to be loose. These are demons coming out. Don't think these are holy angels of God coming down. They are loosing angels that are demons at this point. And they are coming for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to kill a third of mankind. That's what they're coming for. Now, do the math kind of in your head a little bit. A third of mankind, I believe somewhere around 7.4 billion is Earth's population right now. Now, it's hard to speculate on numbers, but remember, we've already had several already taken out. The church, at this point, if you believe in that point of view, the church is now removed. So let's just throw a nice round number. Let's say you got 5 billion left. And the third, and I might be overshooting that number, okay? But a third of that is about ready to die. And so the thing here to remember is that the border of the Roman Empire to the east was the river Euphrates. Beyond lived the Parthians, an Iranian people, who were a grave threat to the civilized world of Rome. Several times their mounted troops constituted a terror from the east. The plague of the sixth trumpet shows similar imagery. Okay? God is showing some things happen here. First thing that's similar in this is the origin near the Euphrates River. The second is the bright plated armor. And third is the Parthian tactic of shooting arrows while charging and retreating. We're going to get into all that here. But there are some similarities of what is going to come out of this river that actually posed a threat to the Roman army when the Roman Empire was big. So again, we are seeing God show John some things in some very similar times of what he had going on, but still so similar to what was happening then, it still applies today. Because the last I checked, the Euphrates River is still there.
Yes.
Okay? It's then the Euphrates River still does serve as a border for what would be known as a Roman Empire. So now somebody would like to read, we stopped at 15, right?
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so now somebody would like to read verse 16, and let's do through 18 on this.
Brother James?
Yeah.
You were talking about loose the demonic angels from the Euphrates River. Remember, it was, what's his name, when he was taken to Babylon, that served the kings, remember? He was, you just talked about.
Oh, Daniel?
Daniel. Okay, Daniel, when he was praying for an answer from God, okay? It's, I'm gonna try to get to it. The angel that brought the message was, Gabriel.
Yeah.
Gabriel got stopped.
Mhm.
But that was the dynamic angel was there and, you know, he was bound.
Yeah.
After Michael came down and fought him
Mm-hmm.
and beat him and put him in afraid as if
Right.
that was one.
Yeah.
And you have probably about 2 or 3 more
Mm-hmm.
that was bound throughout time there.
Yep. Yeah.
They were kings, or I'd say generals of the army of Satan.
Right.
They had the power.
Yep.
And we're seeing it now.
This is looking at this here on this commentary I'm looking at. It says that the Euphrates is also associated with the first sin, which is in Genesis 2:10-14, the first murder
Mhm.
in Genesis, and the first organized revolt against God, and then the first war confederation. And that's all in Genesis and the first dictatorship. We're all
Yeah.
done around that river, which that's pretty.
Yeah.
Euphrates is wow.
Yeah,
I mean, from Genesis, that's
Right.
right out of the gate.
Also, science today says man started in Ethiopia, Africa, or wherever, Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
No, it didn't. It started up there during Iraq, in that area.
Yeah. Yep.
That's where it started. They teach in Rome, that's where they're teaching in school.
That's one of the reasons they think there's such an oil reserve there. It's from the Garden of Eden, all the plant, like.
Okay, so before we read this, I want to read this to you here. It says, these 4 angels, or demons, okay, are released in order to kill a third of the remaining population of Earth. Added to the 1/4 who were killed under the 4th seal judgment, these 2 judgments alone destroy 1/2 of the population.
Amen. That's right.
This does not include those that were killed by wars, famines, and diseases. Okay? So, that's how many's wiped out at this point. About half.
You're thinning out the population.
That's exactly what's happening. Yeah, Zach.
How will suicide be impossible?
Death won't be around.
During the millennium, that won't be a death there either.
Alright, so let's do, what did I say, 16 through 18?
Yeah.
Alright.
And go ahead.
Go ahead.
And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued the fire and smoke and brimstone. By these 3 was the third part of men killed by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone, which issued out of their mouths.
Alright. 200,000. Let me plane that up for you. 200 million. That's how big this army is that's coming to kill one third, a third part of the men. 1/3 of the remaining population will be killed by an army of 200 million creatures.
There's two governments that have people that much.
Mm-hmm.
China's one, and
Right.
What's the name? India.
But I'm gonna throw a but at you. This is not a man army.
No.
This is a supernatural army that's coming up out of the pits of hell, more or less. That is going to come. As a matter of fact, this army, 200 million creatures who are composed, this supernatural cavalry. Some people believe they could be humans, but many people believe they are either demon or demon possessed. The odds of them actually being a full-fledged human army is not there. And a lot of this comes out of 2 Kings chapter 2 and 2 Kings chapter 6. And even further ahead in Revelation 19 is where these thought processes come from in this. So that's how big this army is. And there's a big belief that they are demonic and they're just going to come kill people. Zombies. The zombie apocalypse is upon us. So in a number of end-time prophecies in the Bible, there are predictions of invasions from the east or from the north. Because of Israel's location, most invasions from the east circled the desert and came in from the north. In past history of the Jewish people, they had suffered from Assyrians, Babylonians, and Persians who invaded all from what directions? East and north. All of them. Okay? Ezekiel prophesied of an end-time invasion of Gog and Magog, and that's in Ezekiel 38 all the way through 39. Now here's where I said I'm going to go off a little bit. I want to read to you from the first book of Enoch out of the Apocrypha. Now understand, this is historical document only. This is not God-inspired writing, okay? There's a reason why it's left out of our actual Bible, but I felt this is important to put in here because what we are reading now in the first book of Enoch in the Apocrypha, there are some similarities. And I want you to listen to this. It says, "In those days the angels will assemble and throw themselves down to the east at the Parthians and Medes. They will shake up the kings so that a spirit of unrest shall come upon them and stir them up from their thrones. And they will break forth like lions, like hyenas, and they will go up and trample upon the land of my elected ones. And the land of my elect ones will be before them like a thrashing floor or a highway." So do you see kind of a similarity there that's recorded that Enoch wrote about? I just want to put that in there because John has this, and John is fully inspired by God of what he is writing. And Enoch predicts a day that will come. And he hits it right on. And that's the only reason why I want to put that in there is because of that little similarity that happens in there. Now, I'm not telling you that, I'm not saying all that to tell you that that should be included in the Bible. There's a reason it is left out.
Right.
Okay? But sometimes I fully believe you can use, like the Apocrypha, to kind of go in and get a better understanding of some things because that is a historical document. And it's actually so accurate in its historical writings that many people reference that because of its accuracy. These are things that really took place. There are things that are being predicted in the Apocrypha, but I don't hold that to the standard and as high of a standard as I hold what's in the actual book of Revelation.
That can open your eyes to what was going on.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Now I want you to look here also, the 3 plagues that are mentioned in verse 18. And so whenever you look at verse 18, do you realize those are 3 plagues? 3 plagues that are believed to actually happen all at once. And those plagues are fire, smoke, and brimstone. We're talking about some very devastating times. Some very devastating moments. And, well, I mean, you see how bad it gets. I mean, 1/3 of the population will be wiped out. And I keep stressing that 1/3 because we've seen God take out a 4th. We've seen him take out a 4th. And now it's almost like God is beginning to escalate. It's almost like, okay, I've tried and so far a 4th is gone and I'm kind of, have you ever tried to wonder what God is thinking? I sometimes do that. And so what I'm seeing, kind of envisioning here is, okay, God's sitting there and going, okay, I did this and I still don't have their attention. They still are not turning. They still do not understand my full power. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my hand of protection off of this land, and I'm going to let an army of 200 million, led by 4 demons, come up and take out 1/3 of the population, and maybe, just maybe, they'll start to understand. But now, I say maybe, just maybe. I already know God knows they're not gonna.
That's right.
Okay? But you got that whole type of scenario, and it's so bad. This is why verses 19 through 21 are just devastating verses. They really are. And if somebody would like to read verses 19 through 21, well, we're going to get to why they're devastating. Go ahead.
Before you go there to that reading, do you wonder why God is doing, because he knows the outcome, because he knows only so many are going to, as he's going through this scenario, why is it prolonged? Why not just snatch up, bring the ones that were, in my thought to that, I think this whole thing in the book of Revelation, from the time we leave until, is so that there'll be no man with no excuse.
Yeah.
It's the only thing I can think of why he would do that, because like you said, taking 1/3.
Yeah.
Because I believe he's escalating things, and he's like, okay, if that didn't work, this, but he already knows the outcome as each
Right.
punishment comes. It's not like us when we escalate a punishment with our child or something. We still don't know
Right.
when it's going to finally take effect. He knows all that. So all I can think is that there'll be no man that can say, why didn't you show me, God?
Yeah. And then part of me also, I sit there and I think and I wonder, and it kind of goes back to what we talked about last week, is you have God sitting there pouring out his judgment on this earth. And who is right there by his side probably going, give some of them more time. He's still doing that. At this point, Jesus is still saying, give them time. And so, because we have to understand, Jesus sees more potential in us than we see in us.
Right.
I mean, we have to understand that. Jesus sees our full potential of what we could become. And yet, most of us never realize what we could fully become because we don't see what Jesus sees in us. So part of me has to sit there and wonder too, is Jesus sitting there seeing there's some out there that will still turn? He's going, hold on, give them a little bit more time. I don't know who had their hand up first.
I was saying, isn't it also, God's word is wrapped in truth. He will not change it. He said, his word said that he'll give you ample time. So
Right.
he isn't going to shorten it because he is wrapped in his word. And it'll stay until it's finished.
Yeah. Yep.
My mind is not pulling the person out in the scripture, but this reminds me on a larger scale. Who was it that was whenever back in the Old Testament when God was destroying, he said, well, if I find 10 good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was Abraham
Yeah,
outside, what was that, Sodom he was doing that?
Yeah.
He was gambling for
Yeah,
Sodom.
he was trying to get Lot out of there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the same, this is what Jesus is doing at a lot larger scale.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
These men back there are Christ's examples.
Mm-hmm.
You can see Christ in every one of their, major decisions.
Right.
Well, it's like Pastor Andy was saying too, the people with apostasy, it's like, I don't know what I believe. I don't believe anything. I need to see something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to prove it to me.
Yep.
And that's what he's doing. It's like, you want to see that I'm
Right.
more powerful?
Yeah.
Here.
I mean,
And
how
they
many,
still don't turn.
how many times have we done that where we've said, God, show me that you're there, and now God is showing people, not that he's there, well, he's showing them that, but he is showing them his full power.
Yeah, and there's a difference between the one that's a believer saying, God, show me that you're there, looking for comfort, looking for care,
Yeah.
and the people that are sarcastically,
Right.
however you want to put it,
Yep.
saying, show me you're there, I still don't believe.
Right.
I mean,
Go ahead, Josh.
At this time, will anybody turn to God before, like, while this is happening?
So,
And, like, if so, then will the demonic creatures and stuff attack the people that have turned to God?
okay, so my belief that we have, and this is a very strong belief of mine, at this point the Spirit is still here. As long as the Holy Spirit is here, people can still be saved. So I believe that there will still be people turning to Christ
I also,
So
and,
will-
and coming, but they will not be safe from death
right,
at this point. Where you had the rapture take place, and that was all the people that were believing at the time and that were covered under the blood of Christ, and they were removed, right? Okay? And so now what you've got is, okay, people can still be saved after the church is removed because the Spirit's still here. But there's one big difference you have now. The only way you leave now is you have to die.
right.
And so I don't think that they will be completely safe from this, but I believe that they will be, there might be, how do I want to put this? I think God is going to protect them to an extent, but they still have to die. You know what I mean? So they may not get the full power of what is going on, but they still have to leave this place. And the only way out is death.
but
Yeah.
then they come into new lives.
Right.
It's probably, I mean, they wanted to die a minute ago.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
But these are the souls under the altar who prayed for
Mhm.
God to take revenge.
But, you know, we were talking, you know, that God show us himself, and like
Mhm.
Pastor Ray, when he said that last statement, it made me think of, we ask God to show himself to us almost every Sunday. Don't
Yeah.
we ask him to touch us with the Spirit? I mean,
Exactly.
almost every Sunday we pray for that.
Yep.
Aren't you glad that you believe and trust?
Yeah.
You know, you're not like, what's the name of it, denied, you know, I can't see it unless I can see the nail scars in the hand and the wound in the side.
Yeah.
Thomas.
Doubting Thomas, yeah.
Yep.
You know, I don't know how he could have been so far off after being with Christ all that time, and his brothers telling him that they saw a talk, you know?
Yeah.
It's like he was still blind until grace came and
Yeah.
opened his eyes.
So I want to kind of back up here real quick and kind of get us caught up on some things, because there was a key thing I think I forgot to point out in verse 15. But so in the sixth plague, the four demons who were bound by the Euphrates are unleashed. The coming judgment is ordained to come at a precise time. That is what, and I meant to point that out and I totally forgot to, but when you look at verse 15, it says, and the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year to slay the third part of men. What that is saying, God has picked the exact, precise moment that this is going to happen.
Exactly.
Okay? So what does that tell us again? God is still fully in control of what's going to take place. Even though there is demonic activity taking place on earth, you better believe God is still in control of what is taking place. So I wanted to point that out. And also the events set loose will bring death to 1/3 of mankind. Now, we already talked about that. Now, previous disasters, such as the flood with Noah, or the Black Death of the Middle Ages, are only comparisons in history. The destructive forces consist of a cavalry of 200 million, and some interpreters argue for little armies. This is what Howard was kind of talking about. A lot of people point straight to China. Okay, but so there is that. There are people that do that. Others emphasize that these are demonic forces from hell and that literal human armies are not intended. The horses and their riders have elements like animals, like humans, and with fire, smoke, and brimstone that are hellish. As in the previous plague, the historical background is Parthian cavalry. But these horrible hordes are demon-inspired, demon-led, resulting in unparalleled death and destruction. As the plagues come upon the world, 2/3 of humanity not killed might be expected to turn to the Lord in their faith. You would expect that, right? You would absolutely expect it. I want somebody, let's go ahead and read this and read verses 19 through 21, because you're expecting a great turn to take place. But I want you to read 19 through 21.
For their power is in their mouth, and in their tails. For their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils, and idols of gold and silver, and brass and stone, and of wood, which neither can see, nor hear, nor walk. Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts.
Okay, now let's go back to what Josh asked, because I answered his question in exactly how I believe at the point that we were at where we were reading.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have a little bit better of an answer, don't we? So when you asked if people will still turn, right? If people will still come to salvation, I believe that the Spirit is still here, the Spirit is still working, but what we just learned is simply this, okay? They are so enmeshed in their false religions that they do not see the truth. That's where we're at.
There's a difference in can they and will
And
they.
will they? Can they? Yes. Will they? According to Scripture, no. Unfortunately, it's at that point.
In Israel, you got 3 or 4 kinds of people.
Yeah.
Now this was basically for God's people who turned away from you after He appointed them. Now I see it maybe a little different than you do. I see this as God using man and the power of man, okay, with demonic leadership, where you see it as supernatural beings.
Yeah.
I see it as God, because He's always used the human to take care of His problem. I see it still in my interpretation. Of course, I've prayed about it a lot.
Yeah.
What we have here, you can describe it in any way you want. You still have the weaponry of today.
But I
Can
see
be-
fire and brimstone coming out of a man.
Well,
Push the button.
You
it
want
could
to
be
stop
like
me?
missiles and things.
Yeah, you
too.
will.
Let's go.
I'm sorry.
The third of mankind, though, is there a number on that?
I don't think there's not one right here now. I mean, we could speculate based off the population.
You know, they could be
But-
250 million men.
Well, it's saying,
200
the thing I'm reading is saying a billion, and they're using China too, you know, and it's just like, you know how it is, you take what you gotta pick and choose.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so,
But a billion people, that's.
so what is causing people not to turn is a huge problem we have today. Idol worship.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it says that they're enthralled in idol worship. And so, whenever you look at that, think about this. 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 4, and I'm going to paraphrase this, says basically that an idol is nothing at all in the world. Okay? Which is true. A very true statement. But one thing we also know is that demonic forces are involved in false religions. And that is why a false religion is so easy to deceive people, because the greatest deceiver that that man has ever known is behind it. So it does make it easy for deception to happen. And later on, in some visions that take place here in the book of Revelation, satanic deceptions and false worship are described in even more detail. We're going to get to a point where we're going to be reading nothing but, it's going to seem like we're talking nothing but idol worship at one point. And that's where things are going to be. But here, I mean, it tells us, and the rest of these men, that which were not killed, repented not of the works of the hands, that they should not worship the devil, or worship devils and idols of gold and silver, brass, stone, and of wood, which neither can see, nor hear, nor walk. We are talking about a false god that people are worshiping, and God, the one true God, His full power is on display, and people still will not turn to him. They'll still stay with their false gods.
And you think he just done.
Right? At that point, you think you go, nope. I mean, at what point do you throw the little statue out? Here's the point. But, I mean, God has shown John that these people won't. They will stick to their false gods. And not only that, but they're not apologetic for their false religion. They're not apologetic for their idol worship. And it says here too, neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. They are not sorry for anything they've done. Go ahead, Dennis.
Well, you see that, to me, it hurts my heart to see the world in the state it is now. And, and you get frustrated trying to teach or preach or whatever and reach people. And you feel like you're hitting a wall sometimes. But you see here, this is factual. This is God's word. All this, and they're still not getting reached,
Right.
It's just, it's eye-opening sometimes, and it's sad.
Part of the problem, I think, when we look at people, you could step back, we could go back 100 years, and people were saying the same thing about the people prior to them. They say, I don't understand why these people. Here's what I see. We are a people who live in the here and now, and we know we've lived through. You're 50, you're 60, you're 70, you're 80. You live through what you lived through, and those people in that day and age that are living, the stuff that's going to be going on is going to seem like life.
Yeah.
This is what happens in this day and age.
Mm-hmm.
So watching something change to worse, it's just like what Dennis was. It hurts his heart to look at the world and how it is today.
Mm-hmm.
That's based off of only 50 years and looking at what people did how different it was X amount of years ago. I think part of the reason why these people aren't turning is because what they see is, yes, this is happening, but this is life now, and I'm still here.
Right.
I'm still here. You get a false security as you're going along. What we do as Christians, though, we're sitting here looking at it from the whole beginning till now. But I think people that aren't with God, they live in only this.
Right. Yeah. Zach, did you have another question, bud?
Yeah. Is that Dale fake God from around the time of like Elijah, someone still around? In like the time we were here, from like that story with the ox getting burnt by the...
It's similar in it being just a false god. Is it necessarily that one? I don't know. But it is a false god. So it's kind of along the same lines.
We have throughout the Bible, from the beginning to the end, we have at the Antichrist. People label that as the one he's talking about in Revelation. We've had them all down there.
Right.
There'll be one who will stand out.
Yep.
He won't be just normal. He'll stand out.
That's right. So in verse 20, it is believed that a lot of religions, and this is even true today, a lot of religions involve demon and idol worship. That happens today. We have a literal church of Satan that gathers and meets in today's day.
I'll tell you, James, we're killing time. I had one of my sisters had 2 daughters. We're in that Satan stuff. They believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
They believe in Florida. They was with those. I don't know what you would call them. Whether
they went to a church of Satan.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they believe that.
Yeah.
But what Satan has put out there.
Yep.
And no matter what you said, that they were blinded. That's it.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Like I said, the greatest deceiver that man has ever known is behind this type of stuff. And he doesn't want people to know the truth. And whenever you look at this also in verse 21, it says they did not repent for their murders nor their sorceries. Now, sorceries, just to kind of go through that, is kind of like magical arts, potions, and poisons.
Right.
And that comes out of Galatians. That comes out of many more times in Revelation. And so I don't want to get into this because Dennis hit on this. I remember we weren't here that long, and Dennis hit on this, and this was an exciting conversation. But whenever you look at this, though, think about this. From the Greek word, we derive the English word pharmacies. Now, this chapter shows, one, the reality of some of the activity of the unseen world, the Satan and demons, and two, the hardness of human hearts. Now, sorceries are dangerous. Okay, and whenever you look at these are those people that practice witchcraft.
Right.
Okay, and that is a very real thing. People practicing witchcraft.
I hate witchcraft.
And these people, they believe wholeheartedly that they have powers.
Yes.
And they can do things to people. They believe that wholeheartedly. What's that? I got a doll and I'm gonna stick a needle in its face. What is it? Voodoo. And that is widely popular. A lot of people immediately go, "Oh, Haiti, the Haitians, they're big into that." It's true, they are. But that is a very, very well-practiced false religion in the United States of America. Yeah, whenever you get down into the bayou territories, down through there, that is really heavily believed and taught. And there are people that they call them ministers of voodoo. And people go to them, and they go to them to cure their sickness and to cure their diseases that they have, and they'll do all this, and they'll go, "Oh, well, I'll just do this to this doll, and it'll cure you," and they do this weird stuff, and I don't get it. But it's out there. See, we are everywhere. A lot of times I think, as people here in our country, we think that we've got it, and we really do, so don't take this the wrong way, that we got it a lot better than a lot of countries. And we really do, don't get me wrong in that. But one of the things about our country is we are not a country of one belief.
That's right.
We're not. And so out of that comes many false religions that are in our country. And if we're honest about it, I believe that the Christian, true Christian, Bible-believing Christian, is probably the minority when it comes to that.
Yes.
Everybody else has their false religions, their false doctrines that they believe in. We have some really big ones. Hi, friend. You get the knock on our door. You want to get rid of them? Do what Jenny does. Jenny holds the dog back and says that my husband is a Free Will Baptist minister, and they take off. They don't want to have that conversation. But see, the thing that happens is the devil gets into these deceptions and gets into these that nobody will hear the truth out of them, out of what's going on, because the devil doesn't want people to hear the truth. And it's not because he cares for them. He just is keeping them from God. That is his end game. He don't care one thing about people, and yet there's people that believe that the devil cares for them.
Yeah.
All he cares about is keeping you away from God.
That's it, huh?
That's all he cares about.
He likes to strike at God.
Yeah.
Exactly, from the start.
Yeah.
Eve thought the devil was doing her a favor.
Yeah. Yeah. So now Paul warned us. That the God, lowercase g, of this age, who is Satan, has blinded the minds of unbelievers so they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ. Now that is a paraphrase of 2 Corinthians chapter 4. Not only do people hang on to their false worship, but they also continue in their wicked lifestyles. If the first part of the 10 Commandments is broken, then violations to the second tablet are sure to come. Love of God and love of humanity are linked. Here you go. I mean, this is what Dennis has been really on here that I can remember since I got here. So I imagine he's been on it since before that. But the love of God and the love of humanity are linked. True biblical love for God is a response to his love for us. True biblical love for God has ethical results. If you do not get an ethical result out of loving God, then you need to re-examine your love for God. It has to be ethical. And you sit there and you go, well, James, what is the ethical standard? It's right here.
Yeah.
This is our ethical standard. So whenever we talk about that, and I saw a post before I came here, a friend of mine on Facebook, and I decided, you know what, I'm not even going to get involved because, I've had enough people remove me off of Facebook this year. I don't need to risk a few more. But she got on her stance about the LGBTQ, LTUV, whatever other letters they've adopted now. But basically, the LGBT movement that is sweeping our country, and which is about to cause another split in churches, if you're following that story close enough. But she got on this thing, and she's sitting there, and she's going on and on about don't sit there and tell me that and she put it in quotes, God doesn't love that person. And so badly I wanted to get involved in this, but I know I'll be called judgmental. Because I'll give her the real answer. God absolutely does love that person. God absolutely hates the sin that they are in. You see, we are to love people. And that shows if we have biblical love for God, then we will have love for others, a biblical love. That does not mean we compromise on our belief.
Right.
You can love somebody and still tell them the truth. I mean, if you truly love someone, that's how you'll do it. People need to know. And, I mean, you read this, and what we read here is God's power is on full display. People still have the full opportunity to come to Christ for salvation, and they repent not. Because they're so enthralled in their wicked ways. People need, now more than ever, to know the truth. They need to know it. This is their future. This is their future. If they don't.
They got different ways of interpretation of this, even in Revelations. But you go back to the basic. What is the basic? Jesus Christ. He came, was born of a virgin, died for us on the cross, buried, and rose again. Now that's it. If you get all confused about anything else, keep that.
Right, exactly. And so, we are at a time in our life where every preacher is out there saying today could be the day.
Yeah.
And let me clue you in on a little secret. They've been saying today could be the day since the day Jesus went back.
That's exactly right.
But today, more than ever, I believe it. I believe it for two reasons. One is because Jesus said he's going to come back and get us. And that's good enough for me. Whether I'm alive or I'm standing up in my grave, I'm ready.
What did Jesus say though? Before he come back, the days will be like they were in Noah's day.
Exactly.
And if you look at now in the sin and immorality,
See, and that's what I was going to say. The other part of that, the reason why I believe now more than ever we're getting possibly close to some of these things taking place is because I am seeing the things take place in this world.
They were saying that when they read of Hitler and movement across Europe.
Yep. I mean, we literally just read of a denomination. It was all over the news. They were talking about it. They had their world meeting. Really, it wasn't even a national meeting. It was their world meeting. And their main topic of concern was allowing same-sex marriages to take place within the church, allowing LGBT. I know, I really got to get away from the political correctness of it.
Q too, I think.
Yeah, whatever. But those people in the pulpit proclaiming the Word of God, and the only thing that stopped it from happening was the vote from outside of our country.
Yes.
That's what held it. Do you know what that just told me? There are more people outside of the United States of America that still believe that the Bible is true in its entirety than there are inside it. And who has more access to the Bible than anyone on the face of this earth? An American.
Right.
An American. And because of that, the way that vote went, I seriously think we're about ready to see another denomination split. We're really about to see it. And it's sad because I'm just going to throw it out there. The devil has made his way into the church.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And let's not make no mistake about it. It's not just that one denomination. Many are. And you know, if you really examine it, you can find where the devil is trying to make his way into every single church.
Yeah.
And why is that? Okay, back up, rephrase. He's trying to make his way into the Bible-believing churches.
That's right.
Okay, because the ones that don't adhere to God's word, he don't have to worry about.
He's already got them.
He's got them right where he wants them.
That's why I used to make a statement that even though I didn't agree with them, there is a certain feeling that you could have a Catholic religion. Didn't agree with them, but there was a feeling I had about them for a long time that they stood on what they stood on, what they've always stood on, and they weren't budging.
Right.
There's a respect you can have for that. The reason why this stuff is happening, that vote that you talked about, there was, whatever the title is of the head guy from outside the United States, the European and all that, there was one guy, and he was from Africa. I remember seeing, I watched a video of it, and his statement, I won't say it exactly, was what was biblical all these years is still biblical today.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
The reason this is happening is because we're altering what thus saith the Lord.
Yeah.
How can you all those years belong to that and proclaim the truth? It's veering, it's either altering or veering away from this. That's allowing that to happen.
Right. And I believe if you go and you look, I believe Paul told Timothy of this exact thing happening.
Yeah.
That's it.
What it was, correct me if I'm wrong on the statement, I might have to paraphrase this a little bit, I can't remember exactly, but it's somewhere along the lines of, in the last days, that which is wrong will become right, and that which is right will
Right.
become wrong.
Exactly.
And that's where we are getting to. And so whenever you look around, you got to be sitting there going, okay. Nothing is happening that the Bible hasn't warned us about. It has, you know, all of it's in here.
We can't pinpoint the time, but we can see the movement throughout the years. The war set up. It wasn't ready.
Right. Yep.
We're ready now. It might be 100 years. It might
might
be
be.
tomorrow.
Exactly. And that is why we have to live every single day of our life like it's the day Jesus is going to come.
Amen, that's right.
Yeah. 2 Timothy 3. This know also, that in the last day perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful and unholy, with natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors and heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. It says, from such turn away.
Yeah.
But if that ain't where we are, I don't know.
Right? I mean, let's be honest. The majority of the household, who runs a household today? Ain't the parents. I mean, if we're honest, I mean, I know we're pushing for time, but I'm going to go ahead and say this, and then we're going to start wrapping things up. But, I mean, what you said there, parents don't run their household anymore, and the reason why is because we don't have parents anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I'm of that generation, and I'm willing to say this. We don't have parents anymore. We've got to a point. I just saw that. You just got to reaffirm that you don't belong in that group, didn't you?
I just say he doesn't live in one of those houses.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you, Zach don't live in one of them houses either.
Neither
but
does Joshua.
we have a lot of households though that are out there that parents are more concerned about being a best friend than they are about being a parent.
Or
Yeah.
providing entertainment.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I think that a child should be able to come to their parent with any problem that they have, but you also still have to be a parent.
That's right.
A lot of I think what people's problems are is government they're stepping in. They're taking, the teachers aren't allowed to punish kids in school no more. You're not, they're scared that they're gonna get in trouble,
Whenever Zach was
with the kids being taught that in school, so that's what they're being told by the teachers. They're being told if your parents,
I had my youngest daughter tell me one time that if I whooped her like I said I was going
she's
to,
gonna tell.
she was gonna tell somebody.
Yeah.
I said, you go right ahead, but when I get out of jail, you're gonna hurt even more.
I remember one time we took Zach out to dinner. He was young. He was younger too, maybe, and he started acting up. It was that day I learned what is socially acceptable to say in public. Because when I looked at him, and I said this to a 2-year-old because if you haven't figured it out by now, I have no filter. I say what I say. And I said, boy, if you don't knock it off, I'm going to take you out to the car and beat you like a redheaded stepchild. Every table around us let me know that you cannot socially say that anymore. But let me tell you something. He got to the point one day where I drug him out to a car. I never had to take him back the second time.
Amen.
Right.
See, that's the difference. That's what I'm talking about. We need people to be parents.
Right.
I don't know if Danielle remember or not, but when she was in her teenage years, early, whatever, defy me, and wanted her own rules. We were setting up a little house on the front porch for her, and it was cold out like now. Okay, here you are. Here are your rules. Right here you go. You do what you want, but this is it. You want to come back inside? It's my rules. She didn't last 10 minutes.
I had my day. I think I've told this story before. I couldn't have been but knowing where we lived at 5 or 6 years old, and I said I was going to run away. And he put everything in a suitcase, one of the big suitcases. I wasn't no bigger than Zach is as far as size. And he set me out on the sidewalk, and he said, have at it. And at this point, I just broke out crying. I can remember this, and it seemed like it was a good half hour begging and pleading. And he was serious. He was like, I'd start to walk back towards him. He's like, no, you don't live here no more. Don't you step on this property. And, oh boy, and I never did it again. I was glad. No matter what went on, I was cool.
Spare the rod and spoil the child.
Right.
But there's people fighting back. There's a new movie coming out called Unplanned. I don't know if anybody's seen the trailer or not, but it's going to cause a lot of stir. The coal is really good with Planned Parenthood.
Yes, it is.
It's all about it, and it's
Yeah.
like, wow, it's going to stir the pot.
All right, so next week we'll be into chapter 10. I'm going to be upfront and honest with you right now. For me, this is the most confusing chapter I'm going to teach on in this whole book. Is right here. And whenever we get into this, if you study this on your own throughout the week, you might start going, what's going on here? I'm literally at the point where I first started studying this, and I studied, and I went, what is this chapter even doing in here? Because everything that happened, John's going to get told not to tell us about it. It's confusing. It is confusing to me.
Sounds like he's saying that there's a lot more that's happening and go on in that time.
Right.
But you're not going to know it. But he's wanting you to know that there is a whole lot more other than what's wrote down.
I got a secret, but I ain't telling you.
And,
Exactly.
and I was
Make
sitting
you
here.
anxious.
I was sitting here this morning during Sunday school, and I thought Howard was going to spoil next week because he started talking about the book and how it tastes, and I'm sitting there over there going, we're not there yet.
I remember you saying that.
I think I looked back at you. But we'll be doing that next week. Next week, chapter 10 is the little book. We're going to get into that. And then we get into the two witnesses, which won't be next week. We're gonna save that for its own week. And then we get into war, and
I think we'll go to Christmas, probably on this.
He's fine with that.
I'm okay. The longer we go through this, the less time I have to figure out what am I going to do when I'm done.
Is it
No.
Revelation
Give it a couple
Right.
months.
Yeah, Zach.
We'll be done in a
Will
couple
they
months.
still be celebrating Christmas in this time?
You know what, Zach? I don't know. I don't know.
He's like,
That's my boy.
Answer that question.
I'm telling you what, that's my boy. Are there going to be presents? Let me tell you something, Zach. If you live right, you're not going to have to worry about it.
That's right.
Yep.
That's the idol, Santa.
Wow. Way to ruin my household. Thank you. All right, so what we'll do now is we'll come to you for prayer requests tonight.